you look at the compressor, there is a threshold, a ratio, attack, release, and gain. So what does this threshold? Threshold means that where I want the compressor to start working. That's a threshold. Ratio, yes. How much you want the compressor to work. Attack, remember, all right? How fast we want it to start working. Okay, remember, different sound has different attack time. So we just bear in mind that if you set a very fast attack, but if I play on a violin, it will have a different effect. Okay, so you just bear in mind with that. And it has a release, basically how fast you want it to stop working and gain. Okay, we will talk about all this setting right now. On the LS9, we will have the compressor. If you look at the screen, we have two dynamic range here, and we can actually set this dyna 1 to be gate and dyna 2 to be a compressor. You can actually set two compressors. That is more for creative purposes, and you have also all these settings there. You see, ratio, attack, release, gain, or knee. Okay, so we will talk about knee later. So now, look at this example. This is my noise floor, minus 80 dB. And for this particular signal, it reaches to minus 4 dB peak. I will set a threshold at minus 20, meaning when this signal goes over this threshold, it will start working. And I set the ratio to 1 to 1. Ratio 1 to 1 means for every dB it crosses the threshold, it will output 1 dB. So basically 1 to 1, there's nothing, there's no changes. All right, there's no changes. But what happens if I were to set the ratio to 2 to 1? Meaning for every 2 dB that crosses the threshold, it outputs 1 dB, so half of it. So my final output will be 8 dB gain reduction, and my peak will be minus 12 now. Okay, from minus 4 to minus 12, that's 8 dB gain reduction. And if I were to set it to 4 to 1, my peak now will be minus 16 dB, and I will have 12 dB gain reduction. Ratio 6 to 1. Okay, I'll have 13.3 dB gain reduction. And if I were to set it to ratio 10.1, 10 to 1, okay, I will be going into the limiter function. Means any ratio that's above 10, the compressor is no longer called a compressor, it's called a limiter. Because it is really limit the output above the threshold. So right now you see, if I were to do 10.1, the peak is only 18.4, it's almost 14.4 dB reduction. So it means only about 2 dB passes through. And if I were to set it to infinity, this is what we call a brick wall limiter. It means there's nothing passes, or everything is just brick wall. It will just hit the limiter all the time. So this is the understanding. Then what is gain? So right now, if I were to set, for example, if I were to set it to ratio 4.1, then my total level will be actually softer, even though I compress it down. So I need to bring it back up. Else, those people with the smaller devices will not be able to hear it. And therefore, this is what we call a makeup gain. So those 8 dB that I lost, I can actually gain it up later on in the process so that I will hear everything. But right now, previously on the ratio 1.1, those with the smaller device, they might not be able to hear this part because it's too soft. But because I gain it up to 2, because I compress it to 2 to 1, and I gain it up by 8 dB, those with the smaller device can hear this level, the level that's below here. But if I were to compress it over to ratio 4.1, definitely those with the smaller devices, they can hear it because it is above the threshold is because right the device can play this kind of dynamic range, and of course with the ratio 6:1, I'm quite sure they can hear almost everything from the softest to the loudest part of the music. But we have to be careful with the ratio because why you do not want to over compress, because if it's over compressed then everything sounds very lifeless, because naturally we would hear the inflections of the music from the high and the low notes, okay, not only in pitch but in levels, and that brings emotion. So you have to be very 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 careful. All this is upon your hands, okay, how you set it. I would like to end this video by saying the compressor is like your mother. Just think of it, okay? The threshold, the level she asks you to turn down the music down. Ratio, how much you turn down the music after she shouts at you. Attack, how fast you react. And release, how fast you turn the volume back up as soon as she closes the door.